Good evening. I'm Scott Vanderveer. I'm known here as Father Scott. I'm the pastor of St. Patrick's. So glad that you're here at our church and so proud of the class of 2016. The reading that you just heard is an important one because we Christians believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So that means, among other things, he's the master teacher. He is the one who has the most important lessons we could listen to. So when he speaks, we're wise to perk up. And what he says tonight is so important, especially for people about to go out into the world. Don't worry, he says, about things you can't control. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, or what you're going to drink, or what will I wear. Don't worry about any of that stuff, he says. What you need is to trust that in any given moment, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you're where you are supposed to be, and doing everything you can, the future will take care of itself. And part of that is going to be trusting that God has your concern right in the heart of God, that God knows what you need more than you do, so you can trust. It doesn't mean there won't be a struggle. It doesn't mean that things won't feel overwhelming at times. But in the end, you will not be overcome if you can trust. It reminds me of a story about a man who was traveling across a desert on foot. And he had been traveling for a long time and was long out of water. And he was getting panicky. He was so thirsty, he felt like he couldn't go on. So he stopped to rest himself on a dusty stump. And then he noticed out of the corner of his eye something he couldn't believe. There was a pump there, one of those old-fashioned hand pumps. And he thought, what the heck is a water pump doing in the desert? So he went over to it, and it was all dusty and dried up. But there was a little baking powder can at the base of it with a lid. So we went over, and he took the lid off, and there was a note inside. And he scanned the note and saw that it was written by a guy named Desert Pete, whoever that is. So he started at the top. And the note said, "This pump is old, but it works. I just put a new washer in it and tested it out, so I know that it will. You are standing over an aquifer. There is water below your feet. The pump can pump that water up, but first you need to prime it. The pump will not work unless you prime it with water." And then he couldn't believe what he read next. "If you walk 50 paces due west of here, you will find a jar of water." So he counted out 50 paces, and he found this stone, and he pushed it over, and sure enough, there was one of those glass mason jars filled with water. He could not believe it. He wanted to drink it right away. He looked at it. His mouth was so dry. He was so weak. He said, "Oh, thank you, Lord." But first he read on. And the next line said, all caps, "Do not drink this water." This water is used to prime the pump. You have just enough water to prime the pump. If you drink any of it, the pump will not work. You have to have faith. And you have to pour this entire jar of water into the pump. And then you have to pump. And after a minute or so of pumping, you will have all the water you need. And so he had this dilemma. He said, "I've got water in the hand right now. I don't think anybody is ever going to come this way again. And if anybody does, all they're going to find is my skeleton laying there. I should just drink this water." But then he thought, what if it's true? So he took a risk, and he poured that entire jar of water into the pump. He did not drink a drop of it. And then he started pumping and pumping and pumping, and he pumped for about a minute, and nothing happened. And he was like, "I'm so stupid. Why did I do this? Now I'm going to die, and no one's going to have water." But he kept pumping, and a few seconds later, all of a sudden, out gushed the the most refreshing, cool water he had ever encountered, and he was able to drink his fill.
You've got to find the heart, you must have faith and believe. You've got to give up yourself for your worthy to receive. Drink all the water you can hold, wash your face, cool your feet, but leave a bottle full for others. Thank kindly desert Pete.
Well, I found a jar, and I tell you, nothing was ever clear to my eyes. I was drinking strong drink that comforts my God. You know, when I had raised my friend and water down below, when God gave it to me, I was unconscious.
You've got to run, you must have faith and believe. You've got to give up yourself for your worthy to receive. Drink all the water you can hold, wash your face, cool your feet, but leave a bottle full for others, and kindly desert Pete.
So I poured the jar and I started pumping, and I heard a beautiful sound of water bubbling and splashing up out of that hole in the ground. I saw my shoes and I drunk my fill that hole in the Portuguese. I thanked the Lord and I thanked the pump and I thanked all that.
You've got to pound your heart, you must have faith and believe. You've got to give up yourself for your worthy to receive. Drink all the water you can hold, wash your face, cool your feet, leave the bottle full for others, and kindly desert Pete. Drink all the water you can hold, wash your face, cool your feet, but leave the bottle full for others. Thank you kindly, desert Pete.
So here's the deal. That guy wanted to drink that water. That was natural. He wanted to drink the water. He had a little bit of water, so he wanted to drink it. But he had to know how pumps work. You got to start by knowing that there are laws that rule things, and one of them is that pumps don't pump air and they don't pump vapor. They only pump liquid. So if you want a pump to work, you've got to prime it with liquid. The flow won't start until you make a move. And that's how it works, which is exactly how life is. Because there's a science to all of this. There's a way that things work, and you have to honor it, and you have to obey it. One of the interesting lines of this tale was that Desert Pete said, you got to have faith for this. It's kind of an interesting line. You got to have faith, and then you'll have all the water you'll need. It's exactly what Jesus said in the gospel. Look at the birds. Why are you worried? Why are you freaking out? Everything's fine. Look at the birds. They wake up, have no clothes, have nothing to eat every day, have nowhere to live, and they're fine. God takes care of them. And you're way more important than birds, so keep it together. You got to have faith, he said. Which makes me wonder, what do you think of when you think of the word faith? I think for a lot of people, what they think of is not what it really is for most of us. I think that this song really shows you that faith is mostly a combination of courage and trust. And that's why we have the word faith, because there's no words for those two things. You know, there's no courage, that's not a word. Or kuros, that's not a word. So we have faith. Most people think about faith as just believing things. They think it's all in the head. And it is part of faith is believing things, but it's only part. Because think about it. What good is your head if you're going to die of thirst? It didn't help this guy in the desert to reflect on what he believes. He needed to trust. He needed courage. What people have been through in this community this week with the death of Chris's dad, what are your beliefs going to do for you there? What is staying in your head going to do for you there? It might give you some comfort, but what we're being called to do is go beyond the beliefs of our head and go to the other parts of us. Because faith has three parts. It's got a head part, and a heart part, and a gut part. And the head part is belief, what you believe. The heart part is actually given away by the other languages' words for what the heart is. In Spanish, we call the heart corazón. In French, it's the cœur, courage. Courage is located in the heart. Faith is not complete if you're only in your head. You need to go down to the heart, where your courage is, where your cœur is, where your corazón is. And that's not enough to stop there, because there's a deeper place than that. And that's where trust is located, in your gut. That's what faith really is. And most people misunderstand it, because they think it's all about belief. And that's really interesting, because you know what that means is you'll hear somebody who has strong faith say something that you don't agree with, and so you make assumptions that aren't true, like, I guess I don't believe in God because I met some religious people and they believe in God and they said stuff I don't really believe, so I guess I don't believe in God. And that's not helpful at all. You know, sometimes people will say, well, I heard something about the way faith people talk. I was at this one gathering and I heard somebody say this thing, and I don't believe what they believe about God. I mean, I don't believe in a God who would hurt a child. I don't believe in a God who would let a tragedy happen. I don't believe in a God like that. And you know what faith people would say to you? We don't believe in that God either. We don't believe in that God. We believe in a God that can relate to our head and our heart, one who gives us courage, and our gut, one we can trust in. The problem is, if you only get into the head part, you get into all this drama and all these conflicts that don't do any good to anybody. You know what one of the biggest wastes of time is? The whole thing about religion and science are against each other. That is like the biggest waste of time. I know a lot of people who say, I'd like to be religious, but, you know, the more I learn about science, the more I realize I guess this God stuff isn't true, which is such a false conflict. Because you know what's interesting? Now, there are pastors here from a lot of different churches in town. And what you might not realize is we are very united, but not because we all believe exactly the same things. When you come into a Catholic church, you're going to see symbols and things that you don't see in other Christian churches, because we don't all believe exactly the same things. One of the big ones is, do you know, some Christians really believe that you can only understand the creation of the world according to the 7 days as described in the Bible. And most Christians completely understand and respect that, but not all agree. Catholics, for example, are allowed to believe in evolution as long as we believe it's part of God's plan. Now, not all of the other churches believe that, but guess what? That doesn't divide us, because we're not just connected in the head. We're connected in other ways. We're connected in the heart, where the courage is. So we have the courage to walk together even when we don't agree on every single thing. And we've got trust that God is going to reveal all that we need to know, that we don't need to fight about that. What a waste of time. And we don't need people saying, well, I have to believe in science. God is the author of science too. It's a false conflict. So what makes our lives meaningful, those of us who've walked in the faith journey, is that we don't rely just on our head, though that helps us a lot. We walk together with courage. We trust God is going to reveal things. And that's why we wanted to be here with you to share those gifts with you tonight. I think the story of Desert Pete that we just heard and the gospel about the birds teaches us two really important lessons. And the first one is that we got to have faith. And it's got to be in all three parts. First of all, the head part, you got to know how a pump works. If he was foolish enough to say, oh, I bet I can get this pump working without that water, I'll drink the water, then I'll pump. Well, you can't do that. You got to know the law of pumps. You got to know how pumps work. And then he's going to see, I told you there was no God. No, you don't know how pumps work. What's wrong with you? Then you've got to have courage to delay your gratification. You've got to say, because of all that might come out of this pump, I'm going to let go of the water that I so want right now. And then you pump like mad, and you trust. We need faith. That is the only way the Darragon family is going to get through this time. The only way. That's the only way you're going to be able to go off to college, all of you. It's hard. You know it's exciting. You may have picked a school that you're really excited about, but you know you're going to go there and not know anybody. It's going to be hard. So you've got to have faith. And then the second part, did you hear what he's saying? Drink all the water you can hold. Wash your face, cool your feet. Have all you want. But leave a bottle full for others. Thank you kindly, Desert Pete. You got to pay it forward. It can't be all about you. It can't be all about any one of us. We have to pay it forward. We need to leave a full bottle for the next person. The pump is such a symbol of how life can be given to all if we're just willing to work together. There's enough life. There's enough water. He was standing on an aquifer and didn't know it. There was more than enough water for him and everybody who would ever follow him. But he had to trust and have faith and then pay it forward. I heard something that happened last week that gave me goosebumps. I heard about this tradition that you have at RCS where before graduation you process through the hallways of the elementary schools and the kids come out. One of your longtime subs was there, you know. She's always nosing in on you, Mrs. Lipscomb. She sees it all, you know. She sees it all, and she told us, we had a meeting that night, and she told us about what it was like, and we were crying. We weren't even there. We were crying. We had goosebumps. And you know why? Because that is the feeling of leaving the bottle full for others. That's the feeling. What you did there was put some water in the bottle. That's what you were doing. You were giving the class, not of 2016, but of 2026, you were putting some water in their bottle. And that's why it felt so incredible. I don't know how many of you cried, but you probably did. Because that's why it feels so incredible. Because that's the mystery of participating in this faith thing. You know what's funny, though? A lot of times, we think we're filling someone else's jar. And the truth is that our filling their jar fills our jar, too. Because, you know, a lot of people were here yesterday to fill the Darragon's family's jar. A lot of people. Do you know how many people came to that funeral yesterday? We had programs, so we know, because we passed out all the programs. 700 people. This church holds like 250. 700 people. And so you know what the people who couldn't get in did? They stood outside, and they opened up the windows, and they, listened in, because they wanted to be a part of it. And the thing is, maybe what they thought they were doing was filling the Darragon family's jar. And they were. That's really important. Chris needs you, for sure. But, you know what's amazing? They were filling our jar too. Because we don't know what's ahead for us. We don't know if we're going to live beyond 47. We have no way to know that. We don't know how long we're going to have. We don't know how many days are in our lives. We don't know what the future might hold. So, for them to share their loss with us and to teach us how they're doing it, that was filling our jar. So we have to do what we have to do in the moments that we're in, and we have to leave the rest to God. We have to work on what we believe. It's important to work through that. That's really important. But we can't stop in the head. We have to go to our cœur and get the courage that we need. And then we need to dig down into our trust that this is all going to work out. All of us need that, and so do you. Desert Pete has the lesson that you need, class of 2016, and Jesus has the even better lesson. Look at the birds and how God takes care of them. And how much more important are all of you.